Car makers call them innovations, but in reality, they're 21 of the most stupid features ever put in cars. Features that destroy reliability, drain your wallet, and cut lifespan in half, while dealers smile. From headlights that cost $4,000 to transmissions that eat themselves in traffic, this list is brutal. Let's start with a so-called fuel saver nearly every new car comes with, sold as free efficiency, but secretly piling up repair bills in the thousands. At number 21, start-stop systems. Start-stop tech is pitched as a free lunch, cutting the engine at red lights to save fuel and restart seamlessly when you lift the brake. Automakers love it because shaving idle emissions helps them meet fleet targets without reinventing engines. AAA's own testing confirmed a modest 5 to 7% fuel gain in city driving, which is why the feature spread like wildfire. But every restart is a stress test. Oil pressure drops to near zero, and bearings face dry friction that old engines only saw once per trip. Researchers have shown that repeated hot restarts with today's thin oils accelerate wear, which is why suppliers rushed to invent new polymer-coated bearings just to keep up. The electrical side is even more fragile. These systems depend on pricey AGM or EFB batteries monitored by smart sensors. When they degrade, as they often do in heat or cold, the dash lights up with auto start, stop unavailable. Or worse, the car stalls in traffic. Replacements can run $400 to $800 on many modern cars. It saves pennies at the pump, but the repair bills remind you nothing about start-stop is truly free. Be honest, do you actually like start-stop? Or is it the first thing you disable when you buy a new car? Drop it below. I bet this one splits the comments in half. At number 20, sealed transmissions with lifetime fluid. Automakers love to call them maintenance-free. No dipstick, no schedule, no worries. Just drive. On paper, it sounds perfect. Sealed transmissions with lifetime fluid that never needs changing. But here's the catch. Lifetime doesn't mean forever. It usually means until the warranty is over. Automatic transmission fluid isn't magic. It oxidizes with heat, thins out under load, and fills with clutch dust and tiny metal shavings. Suppliers like ZF, the same company that builds transmissions for BMW and Dodge, openly recommend fluid services every 50 to 75,000 miles. Yet some brands still tell buyers never to touch it. That mismatch leaves owners confused and eventually stranded. When fluid deteriorates, you start noticing cold delays, harsh downshifts, or even limp mode. Ignore it long enough, and you're staring at a $5,000 repair instead of a $600 service. Nissan's class action settlements over sealed CVTs prove how costly the gamble can be. So next time you hear lifetime fill, remember, it's a marketing promise, not chemistry. The lifetime might be theirs, not yours. Skip a $600 service, end up with a $6,000 bill. And the next so-called fuel saver? It wrecks engines while chasing pennies. At number 19, cylinder deactivation. On paper, shutting down half your cylinders while cruising sounds clever. Automakers promised up to 12% better fuel economy, and in government tests, some engines hit those numbers. But in real-world driving, the gains are closer to 5%, and the trade-off is a trail of collapsed lifters, bent push rods, and four-figure repair bills. The system depends on tiny hydraulic lifters that collapse in milliseconds when oil pressure commands them. When they stick or starve for oil, the roller stops rolling, wipes a cam lobe, and sends metal shavings through the engine. GM, Ram, and even Honda V6 owners have seen the same story. Ticking noises, flashing check engine lights, and sudden misfires that only a teardown can fix. The costs are brutal. RepairPal lists a Silverado camshaft job at over $4,000, and in some cases, entire engines have been replaced when the damage spread. And the irony? Owners burned through all that cash just to save a few gallons of fuel. Would you risk engine damage just to save 5% fuel? Or is cylinder deactivation actually worth it? Collapsed lifters are ugly, But the next trend clogs your engine so badly, mechanics literally blast it with walnut shells. At number 18, gasoline direct injection. Gasoline direct injection was sold as the future. By firing fuel straight into the combustion chamber at massive pressure, it promised more power, better mileage, and lower emissions. Sounds like a win-win. The truth is, it quietly created a new maintenance headache most owners never saw coming. In older engines, fuel sprayed across the intake valves, washing away oil mist and soot. With GDI, that wash disappears. Oil vapors from the crankcase and dirty exhaust from EGR bake directly onto the valves. Over time, they form rock-hard carbon deposits that choke airflow, trigger misfires, and make cold starts stumble. The fix isn't a simple bottle of cleaner. Mechanics resort to walnut blasting, stripping the intake, and firing crushed shells at the valves. Shops quote anywhere from $400 to over $1,000, and some brands recommend it every 50 to 70,000 miles. Dual injection systems from Toyota and VW added port injectors just to spray the valves clean, a quiet admission of the flaw. So yes, GDI delivers efficiency, but unless you enjoy blasting walnut shells into your engine, it's a gift with strings attached. Before we move on, hit that subscribe button. We dig into the secrets car companies gloss over, so you can drive smarter, spend less, and stay miles ahead of breakdowns. At number 17, 9-speed automatics. 9-speed gearboxes were marketed as the magic bullet, more gears for smooth cruising, quick acceleration, and better fuel economy. Automakers bragged that the ZF9HP could pack 9 ratios into the size of a 6-speed, thanks to its radical use of dog clutches instead of traditional multi-plate designs. On paper, it looked like German engineering brilliance, but the reality on the road was messier. Owners of Jeep Cherokees, Acura TLXs, and Land Rover Evoques soon complained of jerky shifts, harsh clunks, and even cars randomly slipping into neutral. In 2016, more than 500,000 vehicles were recalled for exactly that. Faulty wiring could trigger a neutral drop at any speed. Even when fixed with software flashes, drivers reported lingering hesitation and flare between gears. The costs if a full replacement is needed? Around $6,000 to $7,000 for parts and labor. And since many of these transmissions are sealed units with lifetime fluid, even regular service isn't straightforward. So while 9 speeds sound futuristic, the truth is, many drivers ended up with more frustration than efficiency. Jerky shifts are annoying, but waking up to a car sagging on its knees overnight is a whole new nightmare. At number 16, air suspension systems. Air suspension sounds like the ultimate luxury trick. One button, and your car glides softer than a limousine, lowers itself on the highway for better aerodynamics, or even rises up to clear rough trails. Automakers sell it as the feature that does everything a steel spring cannot. But the truth is, one tiny leak can turn that dream into a nightmare. Those rubber airbags live inches away from hot brakes, road salt, and grit. Once cracks form, the compressor works overtime to keep pressure, slowly cooking itself until it fails. Replace just the pump and the leak kills the new one too, a cycle owners know all too well. Moisture only accelerates the downfall. A saturated dryer lets water creep in, corroding valves and freezing solid in winter. That's when owners wake to a car sagging on one corner or a dash warning that the suspension has malfunction. Costs spiral fast. More than $1,000 for a single strut, another $1,000 plus for the compressor, and often multiple corners aging together. Air suspension delivers comfort, but when it fails, it empties wallets just as quickly. The next setup leaks fluid until your dash screams at you non-stop. At number 15, adaptive magnetic suspension. Adaptive suspension gets sold as magic carpet tech. Sensors read the road, magnets or solenoids tweak each shock hundreds of times a second, and you're promised the comfort of a luxury sedan with the grip of a sports car. It sounds like a dream until the invoices start arriving. The weak spot is the shock itself. Seals eventually let fluid seep, and once that happens, ride quality goes from silky to crashy. Owners of magnetic ride Audis and GM trucks often report leaks around 50,000 to 80,000 miles, sometimes earlier. And unlike old-school shocks, you can't just ignore it. The computer flags the failure, slaps a service suspension warning on the dash, and locks the car into a harsh fallback mode until you pay up. And paying up hurts. A single magnetic shock on an Audi R8 runs more than 1,000 pounds in the UK, while Cadillac and Chevy SUVs regularly see repair bills of over $2,000 just to fix one corner. Luxury shocks draining $2,000 each? Painful. The next one, it crumbles into pieces the moment coolant and heat meet plastic. At number 14, plastic engine components. Plastic cooling parts sounded brilliant on paper, lighter than aluminum, immune to corrosion, and easy to mold into complex shapes. That's why so many modern engines use plastic thermostat housings, water pumps, and even intake manifolds. On a datasheet, glass fiber reinforced nylon looks bulletproof, but the truth is coolant and heat slowly eat these plastics alive. Studies show glycol literally breaks down the polymer chains, turning stiff housings brittle until they warp or crack. Once that happens, the tiniest pinhole becomes a full-blown leak, often hidden under trays until the low coolant light flickers. The real pain comes from integration. Instead of a simple gasket swap, you're stuck replacing an entire plastic module with sensors and passages molded in. On Volkswagen's 2.0T engines, for example, replacing the leaking thermostat/pump assembly often costs over $1,000 because the intake manifold has to come off. Ford's plastic intake manifolds with molded coolant crossovers were so failure-prone that a class action settlement cost the company hundreds of millions. Plastic saved the automakers pennies per car. For owners, it often means a four-figure bill when those pennies finally crack. The next upgrade manages to trap you in your own driveway. At number 13, electronic parking brakes. Electronic parking brakes look sleek. A neat little switch replaces the old handbrake, and you even get perks like auto hold in traffic or hill start assist. Automakers love it because the system saves console space and trims a few pounds of hardware. But here's the catch. The old cable and lever setup almost never failed, while electronic systems add motors, sensors, wiring, and software, each one a new failure point. Ford recalled nearly 900,000 F-150 trucks because chafed wiring could trigger the brake while driving, with hundreds of documented incidents. Moisture and heat make things worse. Jeep had to issue bulletins for water intrusion at the EPB module, leaving owners stranded with brakes that wouldn't release. Mazda's early EPB-equipped SUVs dragged pads so badly that smoke and scorched rotors became common dealer complaints. Subaru's fix was even bigger. They replaced entire actuator units when sensor boards inside crack, and when it fails, it's pricey. A single electronic caliper can run $800 to $1,000, while an ABS module tied into the system can top $1,200. What used to be a cheap cable swap is now a four-figure gamble hidden behind a plastic switch. Do you actually trust electronic parking brakes, or would you rather stick to the old-school lever? At number 12, pop-out door handles. Pop-out handles sell the dream of sleek aerodynamics and futuristic style. Automakers brag about smoother airflow and a touch of extra EV range, and the clean look does turn heads. On paper, the drag reduction is measurable, but the savings, often less than 1 kilowatt-hour per 100 kilometers, are tiny compared to the risks they add. The truth is, these handles rely on motors, sensors, and wiring buried inside the door. When they freeze in winter or lose voltage from a weak battery, the door simply won't open. Tesla owners in cold states talk about tapping handles to break ice loose, while Jaguar drivers deal with water sneaking into switches and leaving handles stuck halfway out. Safety isn't just theory. US regulators opened a probe after Tesla owners reported being locked out when voltage sagged, and Ford recalled nearly 200,000 Mach-E's because electronic latches risk trapping kids inside. Those moments show how futuristic styling can collide with real emergencies, and when failure hits, the bill is steep. $400 to $1,000 per handle, plus labor, just to replace what used to be a simple pull lever. A $1,000 door handle is painful enough. The next feature takes it further, turning a frozen screen into a car that forgets how to even defog its own windows. At number 11, integrated infotainment screens. Automakers pitch giant infotainment screens as futuristic control centers, features. Everything looks sleek, clutter disappears, and they promise over-the-air updates plus seamless smartphone pairing. For car makers, it's also cheaper. One module replaces dozens of knobs and switches. But the truth is, when that screen freezes, so do the essentials. On Tesla's Model 3, even the defog button lives behind glass, and their 2021 recall admitted memory wear could blank the rear camera and climate controls, both safety-critical functions. Suddenly, your radio problem becomes a legal compliance failure. Hardware fragility makes matters worse. Mazda owners faced ghost touches when moisture corroded the touchscreen's conductive film, sending phantom commands. Hyundai had to recall more than 200,000 cars when weak solder joints killed backup camera feeds. Each case shows how a thin layer or fragile joint can strand entire systems. And the repair bill? Not a $40 knob. Think $1,200 for a Ford Sync module, or nearly $2,000 for Tesla's infotainment upgrade. A single glitch can turn into 4 figures overnight, which is why regulators now push for physical buttons to come back. At number 10, touch-sensitive controls. Automakers love to brag about touch-sensitive panels and glossy steering wheel buttons. They look futuristic, save on parts, and can be updated with software. At first glance, it feels like progress, sleek surfaces instead of chunky knobs. The problem is, these panels fail the second reality kicks in. Independent tests in Sweden found that touchscreen-heavy cars took up to 4 times longer to adjust simple settings compared to an older Volvo with real buttons. That extra glance time is not just annoying, it is dangerous when you need wipers or defrost in a split second. And then there's durability. Cadillac's CUE screens famously delaminated, causing ghost touches where the system would scroll or change volume on its own. Repairs often topped $1,000 because the entire unit had to be replaced. Ford's My Ford touch systems froze so often that the company settled a $17 million lawsuit, with many owners receiving only partial compensation after repeated dealer visits. It's no surprise Volkswagen, Honda, and even Tesla have backtracked, reintroducing knobs and buttons. Drivers want safety, not software crashes hidden behind shiny glass. 4 times slower to adjust settings is risky. The next tech trick punishes you with a repair bill after just a new windshield. Number 9. Modern driver assist systems. Driver assist packages sound like the future. Lane keeping, adaptive cruise, and automatic braking that promise fewer crashes and smoother commutes. Automakers love them because they win safety points and regulatory approval. The problem is that these systems are fragile. A simple windshield replacement can throw a camera a degree off, forcing recalibration that adds hundreds of dollars to what used to be routine repairs. Chappé found that nearly 40% of repair costs on modern cars now come directly from ADAS sensors and recalibration. And when they glitch, it is not just annoying, it can be dangerous. Phantom braking on highways, ping-pong lane centering, or false alerts in rain push drivers to switch them off entirely. Driver assist may look futuristic, but in the real world, it often feels like an expensive experiment. A misaligned camera can cost you hundreds, but the next feature hits harder, because when a single light flickers out, you're suddenly staring at a 4-figure invoice. At number 8, sealed premium headlights. Automakers pitch modern LED and xenon headlights as lifetime units. Brighter, whiter light with crisp beam control and no more fiddling with bulbs. On the surface, it sounds like progress, efficiency gains, stylish light signatures, and the promise of fit-and-forget technology. The truth is, these lights are anything but cheap or simple once something fails. Audi's own service bulletins state that if a single LED daytime running strip goes out, you cannot replace it. You replace the entire headlight assembly. What used to be a $10 bulb swap can now run well over $1,000 per side, and high-end matrix systems can climb past $4,000 before labor. Xenon systems brought their own headaches. Toyota's Prius owners fought a class action lawsuit after headlights randomly shut off while driving, forcing Toyota to extend warranties and reimburse repairs. Moisture is another killer. What dealers dismiss as normal condensation often turns into corrosion, flickering, or dead modules once the warranty clock runs out. So instead of worry-free lighting, sealed premium headlights have become a 4-figure gamble hiding behind a glossy fancy lens. At number 7, dual-clutch transmissions. On paper, dual-clutch gearboxes sound perfect. Razor-fast shifts like a race car, yet smooth enough for a family crossover. They pre-select the next gear and swap clutches in milliseconds, which is why car makers brag about efficiency and speed. But in daily traffic, the magic breaks down. A DCT doesn't have a torque converter, so it has to slip its clutches to creep forward. That slip means heat, shudder, and wear, exactly what plagued Ford's DPS-6, which sparked lawsuits and warranty extensions after endless owner complaints of jerky launches and stalls. When electronics fail, it gets worse. Volkswagen's mechatronics recall admitted cars could suddenly pop into neutral, while Hyundai and Kia had to recall 8-speed DCTs because defective pumps caused complete loss of drive within 30 seconds. And the repair bills? Expect $3,000 to $5,000 for DSG fixes, and up to $20,000 for Porsche PDK replacements. One bad shift, one massive invoice. The next safety tire leaves you broke faster than you can say blowout. At number 6, run-flat tires. On paper, run-flats sound brilliant. Take a nail, lose pressure, and still drive up to 50 miles at 50 miles an hour without touching a jack. Automakers love them because they can delete the spare, cut 30 pounds of weight, and brag about extended mobility. The hidden story is how costly that promise really is. If you actually use the run-flat capability, most brands force you to replace the entire tire, even if the puncture looks repairable. Continental and Pirelli flat out forbid repairs, while Michelin and Goodyear only allow one under strict conditions. That turns a $30 patch into a $300 tire bill. Owners also replace them sooner. J.D. Power found 27% of run-flat drivers had to buy new rubber in the first 2 years, compared with just 16% on regular tires. Add the stiff sidewalls that transmit every pothole into the wheel, and you're staring at bent rims that cost hundreds more to fix. So the trade-off is clear. You might skip changing a tire on the roadside, but you'll pay for that convenience with shorter life, harsher rides, and sky-high replacement costs. Run-flats trade convenience for cost. The next feature strips out the spare completely, leaving you with a flimsy kit that fails when you need it most. At number 5, tire mobility kits. Car companies pitch tire mobility kits as genius little lifesavers. Instead of lugging around a heavy spare, you get a 12-volt compressor and a bottle of sealant. It frees up cargo space, trims 30 to 50 pounds, and looks clever on the spec sheet. Manuals promise you can inject the goo, inflate the tire, and limp up to 120 miles at 50 miles an hour. But the reality is, the success window is razor thin. Sealant only works for small punctures in the tread. Anything near the sidewall or larger than about 6 millimeters, the kit is useless, and you are waiting for a tow. Even Hyundai's manual admits the fix is temporary and often requires full tire replacement anyway. Then there's the hidden collateral. That sticky sealant can clog tire pressure monitoring sensors, killing them outright. Replacement runs $100 to $150 per wheel, multiplying fast if multiple sensors get coated. Shops hate the mess too. Consumer Reports notes many add cleanup fees or simply refuse to repair a sealant-filled tire. And don't forget the kit itself expires. Bottles age out, compressors blow fuses, and Kia even issued a bulletin for leaking kits in cold weather. Instead of a safety net, drivers often find themselves paying more for cleanup, sensors, and new tires, plus still needing a tow. At number 4, variable valve timing. Variable valve timing was sold as genius engineering. Smooth idle at low speeds, extra punch when you floor it, and even a bump in fuel economy. What's not to love? The reality is, it only works if oil stays perfectly clean and at the right thickness. Tiny solenoids and phasers move in milliseconds, and the moment varnish or sludge sneaks in, the system drifts off target. Drivers first notice a cold start rattle or a glowing check engine light with codes like P0011 or P0016. Manufacturers know the pain. Honda's bulletins address loud startup rattles, while Ford extended coverage for rattling EcoBoost phasers that often cost $3,000 to $4,000 to fix. BMW even recalled millions for bolts inside its VANOS system that could shear and cause failure. 4-grand phasers are bad, but the next system? It quits on the highway, killing every function your car relies on. At number 3, 48-volt mild hybrid batteries. Automakers pitch 48-volt mild hybrids as the perfect middle ground. Just enough electrification to boost fuel economy by 10 to 12%, smooth out stop-start, and give launches a little electric shove. Ram's e-torque system, for example, pairs a belt-driven motor with a 30-pound lithium pack and a 3-kilowatt converter, all while keeping the old 12-volt world alive. But the reality is brutal. That tiny 48-volt pack isn't just a helper, it's tied into the whole car. When the battery, the DC-DC converter, or the starter generator quits, you don't just lose stop-start, you can lose the 12-volt system that powers everything. Mercedes had to recall over 116,000 SUVs for underseat ground connections that could overheat and cause fires. NHTSA even opened an investigation into Ram trucks that stall on the highway. And when the pack fails out of warranty, expect a bill between $1,500 and $2,700 plus mandatory dealer programming. One small hybrid assist becomes a 4-figure immobilizer. At number 2, panoramic sunroofs and drains. Big glass roofs sell a dream. More light, a wide-open feel, and sleek modern style. Car makers pitch them as luxury touches that transform any cabin into a rolling sky lounge. But the hidden design is basically a gutter system. Water is meant to run through tiny tubes hidden in the pillars and drain under the car. When those tubes clog with pollen or grit, rain no longer escapes. It floods carpets instead. The nightmare is where the water goes. Modern vehicles stash body control modules, power converters, and wiring junctions under the carpet. A single clogged drain can fry electronics, trigger no-start conditions, or lock the shifter in park. Owners often discover it the hard way. Musty smells, foggy windows, or random warning lights after a storm. What looked like luxury glass quickly becomes a $1,000 repair hiding beneath your feet. The final feature, though? It kills cars faster than anything else on this list. At number 1, continuously variable transmissions, or CVTs. Automakers love to market CVTs as the smooth, fuel-saving future. No shift shock, better mileage, and effortless acceleration. It sounds like a win from every angle. The hidden truth is that this belt and pulley setup lives on razor-thin margins. When fluid breaks down or a sensor misreads pressure, the belt micro-slips and sheds metal into the oil. That slurry then erodes valves and pulley faces, forcing the system to clamp harder and heat up faster. Symptoms creep in quietly: a light shudder at 30 miles per hour, a rubber band delay in traffic, or a faint whine that drivers mistake for tire noise. By the time it's clear, the repair often means a full replacement, commonly $5,000 to $7,000. A CVT promises infinite ratios, but in real-world driving, it often delivers infinite headaches. Now that you've seen the stupid features killing reliability, wait until you uncover 11 illegal engine hacks mechanics don't want you to know. Click here before trying anything risky.